Without further ado, here are Effie and Emily.
Thanks, Anthony. So, this is your last minute holiday prep checklist. The holiday season starting really on Wednesday. And so we've put together this webinar, quick one, just to help you shore up your last minute fraud needs before the holidays start. Just a little bit about Riskified. We are an e-commerce fraud management solution. We work with Fortune 500 merchants all around the world. We have offices in New York, where Anthony is, and Tel Aviv, where I'm sitting here with Emily. We're set to review $12 billion worth of orders this year. And basically, seeing all those transactions gives us a lot of insights into trends in e-commerce and fraud in general. And so we've scoured our records, looked at historical trends, and put together sort of a quick summary of some of those for you that we hope is helpful. As Anthony mentioned, already this November is 20% year-over-year growth over last year, which is actually much more than was anticipated. The consensus was between 10% and 16%. So already it's of course it's record breaking, but it's even more than expected. And so it's a really tremendous opportunity this year for merchants. The stakes are high, which means that false declines are an even bigger problem than usual. We're going to talk mostly about false declines today. What I mean when I say false declines is turning away legitimate orders because you think that they're fraud. Our records show that around the year, 3 out of 5 orders that are declined by merchants are actually legitimate. And during the holidays, that gets worse. 4 out of 5 are legitimate. And the thing about this is it's really hard to get a grasp on exactly how many good orders you're declining, because it's an invisible problem. There's no real way to check this. And we think the best way to get a grip on false declines is to kind of know your risky segments and your safe segments over the holidays, and be prepared for that. As we mentioned, the stakes are high this holiday, and in addition to the fact that false declines, the rate of them is higher, there's also going to be a greater absolute number of them, just because order volume is so high. As you can see here, it's probably not surprising that volume spiked last year on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but also even throughout on the quote-unquote off days, order volume is really high. And so this makes it even more important to not be turning away those good orders.
And I'll just, hi, it's Emily. I'll just pitch in for a minute. You can expect to see in Black Friday and Cyber Monday 4 to 5 times the order volume that you see usually. So if making a 20% mistake or even a 2% mistake in a normal day has one impact, in Black Friday it would have a much bigger impact. So that is much more important than these days.
Right. And part of the reason that false declines are up, by the way, during the holidays is that the holiday season is safer than average. You can see how safe Riskified can improve over 6%. Our approval rates are about 6% higher throughout the holiday season than they are year-round. And so even if you're approving orders at the same rate, then you're going to end up with a higher rate of false declines. Anthony, let's go to the poll question now before we get into the meat of this.
Yep. So the question we've got for you guys today is, what are you doing to prepare for the holiday season? We always want everybody's input. And so the options are expanding your fraud review team, putting in place a new fraud detection system, adjusting your current rules and models, or all of the above. I'll launch the poll now, and we'll keep it open for about a minute or so, maybe a little less. So while everybody is answering this question, and it looks like the answers are rolling in now, it looks like actually almost everybody is just adjusting adjusting your current rules and models, but I'll give everybody a second to answer. Okay, we're getting some more input now, which is awesome. Okay, just in the interest of keeping this thing going, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and we'll share the results for everyone. So adjusting your current rules and models still with 63%, and then expanding your fraud review team and putting in place a new fraud detection system, all of the above. Is this like what we're hearing, Emily, from most of the merchants now, that they're just kind of adjusting their rules and models based on last year?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of most things. I don't want to have like a preferred answer, but this is my preferred answer. We are talking about adjusting. So just in order to adjust it properly, I think what we are going to show is specific segments that you should be aware and actually adjust your fraud rules by them.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, basically the main theme is, and of course, as Emily said, adjusting your rules is probably the right move. The question is how to adjust them. So the main theme throughout the holidays is basically things that you consider to be risk indicators may not be during the holidays. Let's start with looking at card value. So high card value throughout the year is associated with fraud, just because obviously fraudsters are going to try to get the biggest haul that they can. But you can see we expect really high average card value, and it's like the value of the checkout. Tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday should have the highest card values of the year, if the trends hold. And if you're flagging these orders, you're going to get bogged down, and you're going to be falsely declining a lot of good orders. So our tip here is to make sure that you're not flagging orders based on high card value when that value is expected. International orders, it's also really important to know about these. Throughout the year, they are considered risky. Maybe not properly, but they are generally susceptible to false declines. Why? There's many reasons. One is reshipper use, which is generally a red flag. Is actually quite common in these orders, but sometimes for very legitimate reasons. For instance, if a company doesn't ship to their country, the cross-border shopper's country, it's the only way for them to get the orders. General mismatches between shipping and billing address are much more common in international orders. There's also AVS results are going to be NA for a lot of these orders, just because international cards aren't supported. And then proxy use. Again, that's a risk factor, but there are really legitimate uses for international shoppers using proxy. Chinese shoppers, for instance, use proxy almost all the time that they're on the internet, just to avoid the so-called Great Firewall of China.
And I will admit that sometimes when I want to use my Netflix and I want to see the US one, I might leave my US proxy on.
Yeah. So our tip here is to expect this trend to hold. And as you can see, we advise you to be more lenient with international orders in the first half of the holiday season. Right, you can see how safe those are on the graph here. In the second half of the holiday season, around Christmas, it may be wise to adjust your goal and aim for a lower approval rate of cross-border orders. Another segment that is very prone to false declines is mobile orders. We see a lot of false declines in these, and the main reason for that is that most fraud detection is designed with desktop use in mind. Proxy detection systems are usually built for desktop shoppers, and many merchants don't even have proxy detection for mobile. And also mobile IPs tell you a lot less than desktop, right, Emily?
Yes, I think even like the shopping behavior itself, it's a bit more spontaneous. When you're on mobile, you just swipe and order something, and then you repeat that again and again. It's not like the old school building a cart with a lot of different products. So it's a bit different, and some fraud systems might flag this as a very risky thing.
So something interesting, it was surprising to me anyway, was that the year-round, the rate of mobile shoppers is higher during the weekend. We think that's probably because during the week, shoppers like to use their work computers. But during the holidays, this trend is much more clear. You can see there's a big difference in mobile rate usage between the weekends and the normal weekdays. But overall, it's mobile use is higher, probably because people tend to be out of the office even on weekdays during the holidays. So our tip for these, first of all, track your shopping channel if you aren't already. In other words, know whether the order is coming from desktop or mobile. And then get acquainted with both legitimate and fraudulent mobile shopping patterns. As Emily said, they can be quite different than desktop. For instance, first-time mobile customers are relatively quite safe. There are some interesting correlations between time of day and safety of mobile orders. And also, mobile orders tend to fail AVS tests a lot more often because typos are more common because you're typing on a little screen. And so not to overweight AVS tests for mobile.
I'll just add on the typo angle. Some merchants usually use the email confirmation as a part of their shipping process, and this typo, which could do some make a kind of a problem with the AVS, might be even harder when you're writing your email incorrectly. So if I'll enter my email, emily@gmail.com instead of com, I would never receive this confirmation, and I would never receive my goods as well. So be a bit more lenient about these typos. And a somewhat broader angle, I might add, if you're tracking the source, also try to track the browser or the operating system. It seems quite interesting to me that we've found that in the past year, a lot of the fraud orders, I don't want to say that most of them, but there is a high correlation between Firefox and some of the very big fraud rings that we've seen. So I would try to track that as well.
Thanks, Emily. The next segment we're going to look at is digital orders. Now, there are false declines in digital orders. We're mostly talking about digital gift cards here, but there also is a lot of risk. The good news is that digital orders are a bit safer during the holiday season than they are year-round, but they still are quite susceptible to fraud attacks. So it's probably not a big surprise that the highest rate of digital shopping is the day before Christmas. If you forgot to buy a present for someone, the only way you're going to get a present in time is to buy a digital card that's delivered to your email instantly. What we found a little bit more surprising, though, was the fraud pattern. You can see that these orders are pretty safe around Black Friday and also around Christmas, but in the first couple weeks of December, there's a lot more risk in these. So we're not saying to decline all of these automatically by any means, but just to be aware that there are peak periods for these, but the first 2 weeks of December, it's not a super legitimate and common story to order digital cards.
So I think we can sum up this maybe and say that gift cards aren't the favorite gift, but it's the most efficient gift if you're stuck without some kind of present.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The takeaway from this is to have a unique strategy for processing digital orders. Traditional physical indicators like shipping and billing address and the matches of these are pretty much worthless when it comes to reviewing these orders because a fraudster can just put in the real customer, the real cardholder's shipping address and still receive the goods via email. So pay more attention to digital indicators, particularly the email. We recommend looking at the domain of the email. Is it from a sketchy disposable site like mail.com? And also using a third-party site to figure out how long the email account has been open for. The longer that the email account has been in existence, the safer it's going to be. The last group of orders we're going to look at is in-store pickup. In other words, you place an order online and you come to the store and pick it up. It's probably not surprising that the rate of buying online pickup in stores is down over the holidays for two main reasons. One is the really high rate of cross-border orders that we saw earlier. Obviously, they don't have this option, right? You're not going to buy it in France and come pick it up in New York. And the second is that shoppers are smart and they don't want to get anywhere close to a brick and mortar store during the holiday frenzy. So that's probably why the day before Christmas, there's a lot of risk in these orders. Legitimate customers know to steer clear, but fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the in-store chaos. New Year's Eve, however, you can see does happen to be quite safe for these orders. Probably stores aren't quite as crazy then as they are the day before Christmas. So our tip is to pay special attention to buy online, pick up in-store orders during the holidays, and not to be shy about flagging them on the day before Christmas. So these were the patterns and insights that we thought were most meaningful and will provide you the most value when you're trying to maximize your revenue and boost your approval rates over the next coming days and weeks. Just to go over them again real quick. Adjust your benchmarks, aim for higher approval rates these holidays. Prepare for above average volume, even during the days between the holidays. Make sure that you're not automatically flagging orders because of high cart value. Remember, Wednesday and Thursday are probably going to have the highest cart values of the year. Be more lenient with cross-border the first half of the holiday season, but more suspicious the second half around Christmas. Get to know mobile fraud patterns. Have a unique strategy for digital orders, and don't be afraid to flag in-store pickup orders on days when it's risky. Just a final word. These insights are based on our aggregate database of over 1,000 merchants. So some of these may have resonated with you. Some of them may not. The trends for any given company could be quite different. And so make sure you take a close look at what happened to you over the holidays last year. Whatever happened to your store in 2016 is going to be the best indicator of what to expect for this holiday season. In particular, look at which products of yours were charged back the most last year. That's going to be very important. We're going to open up for questions now. Anthony?
Great. Yeah, thanks, Effie and Emily. That was a wonderful presentation. I found it very informative and insightful. And based on the questions we've already received, I believe our audience did too. Let's go ahead and start fielding some of the questions, but feel free to enter any questions you may have into the questions box, and we'll do our best to answer them. The first question I have, so you're saying there isn't fraud during the holidays? It was one of the questions?
I'll start with not at all. I think it's safe to say that we never see less fraud. We might sometimes see more legitimate customers, which will relatively show a lower fraud rate, which is kind of the case here. Everything in the holiday season increases. We see more orders, so we see more international orders and more physical orders and more digital orders. And so we see more fraud orders. And especially from fraudsters who think the shopping rush might be a good time to trick your fraud solution. But, and this is important to say, as I said in the beginning, while there is an increase in the number of fraud attempts, there is a much higher spike in the legitimate order numbers. So this results in a relatively lower fraud rate.
If I could just add to what Emily's saying, I think the general trend is, legitimate shoppers have been waiting all year for sales, and they also give presents. Fraudsters care less about sales, and they also care less about what time of year it is.
Yeah, they don't pay for it, so.
Right. So even though we do see a little spike in fraudulent orders, it's diluted by the legitimate orders.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And so here comes a question that I actually probably would love to hear the answer to as well is, why are international orders more risky around Christmas?
It's a good question. I think Effie touched the basic issue of this in the beginning. We need to split the holiday season into two. We're also, people and merchants and ourselves, we're always talking about the holiday season as something that is like a period of time which is completely equal, but it actually has two parts of it. It has the international, sorry, not the international, but the online shopping season. What we know is Cyber Monday and Black Friday, which is more international and a very global world event with a lot of sales and discounts. And then we have the Christmas gift giving, the more domestic holiday season. So we see the greater increase in the international orders in the online season, which makes sense because people are browsing around the world trying to find great deals, and they don't need it to be shipped to them like right now. And then we have the Christmas, and that is the part where international shoppers is quite safe. But then we have the Christmas part, which most legitimate customers are at their homes or around their families. And it's a bit less attractive to the international clientele, which has already done its main shopping cycle. So it usually just leaves us with more place for the fraudsters that are trying to disguise themselves as international customers. So I think it's quite similar to what happens to the fraud, making the legitimate international base in the first section and the fraudsters in the second one.
Thank you. That makes sense to me, and I think based on the response of our attendee, it makes sense to them as well. So the last question we have, and Emily, I think you're probably suited to answer this one. So we're seeing less buy online, pick up in store shopping. That's the trend we're seeing. Is there something we're seeing more of during the holiday season?
I think it's safe to say we see more orders in general, but I think, does it mean like what kind of trend we're seeing more in the holiday season?
Yeah.
Like shopping trend? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think we talked about the more mobile in several days. We see more digital orders in like last day shopping segments. And we also see more rush shipping, which is something that we usually regard as very risky. Fraudsters love rush shipping. They love to get their products immediately, and they don't really care about the costs. And usually legitimate customers would like to save on this because it could get really expensive. But in the holiday time, as they need their shopping fast and directly to them, they use rush shipping, which is, you'll see more of it, and it is safer than usual as well, especially in the last couple of days before Christmas Eve. I think that's it.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, well, everyone, it looks like we're approaching the end of our webinar, and I'd like to thank everyone who attended. Since we know that some chargebacks are inevitable this holiday season, we'd like to provide you with a copy of our chargeback dispute guide. It's full of useful tips and strategies for fighting and, more importantly, winning chargebacks. I've actually just sent out a link in the chat box for anyone interested in downloading it. You can go ahead and click on the link. And again, if you ever have any questions or you want some information that's more pertinent or specific to your industry, you can always reach out to us. We're happy to answer those questions. Thank you again, everyone, for attending, and we hope you have a happy and fraud-free holiday season.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.